No. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of our series Econs Career 101. I'm Matthew Lim, your host once again. And today we are honored to have a very special guest from the public sector. Let us welcome Ms. Jane Lim, who is the Deputy Secretary for Trade at the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Hey, hi, Ms. Lim.
Hi, Melvin.
Yes, hi.
Thank everyone.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time to join us. So
pleasure.
I'm sure most of our students are eager to hear what you have to say. So maybe do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. So I'm the Deputy Secretary for Trade at the Singapore Ministry of Trade and Industry. So in trade, what we do is really represent Singapore's economic interests abroad, and also, of course, help our companies to expand their access abroad. And basically, this is really to help grow Singapore's economy and also, obviously make sure that we get good jobs for Singapore as well.
Wow, that sounds it sounds like a lot of things to do for you, but thanks for your help for, helping Singapore economy grow. So maybe we start off, like the icebreakers, but maybe some personal questions. All right. So the first question is, how was university life for you? Any fond memories that you remember?
Well, university was always a great time, and I'm sure all of you are tremendously enjoying your time right now as well. I took a very eclectic set of subjects when I was at university, kind of like being very diverse fields, which is, I think, a bit of the story of my life. So I was both a biology graduate as well as a political science major. So very, very science and art at the same, current affairs and all that at the same time. Well, university was great. I think it's always a wonderful time to be learning a lot, and I think forming your own views, as well as I think networking. I was in the US when I was doing my undergrad, so it was also a chance to really experience a very different culture, learn to, I think, speak up a lot as well in a very different environment. And I think basically just learn a lot about not just in the US, but also interacting a lot with international friends, counterparts, students from many, many different countries. But a wonderful time, which I'm sure you guys are also enjoying yourselves right now too.
Yeah, definitely. So as you say, you've done a lot of, like, as you say, biology and political science. I don't think a lot of people would actually do that together, but that's very interesting. So like, what are some modules or fields that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, I have to say, in biology, I mean, this is sometime before we started doing a lot of investments into biotech, but certainly genetics was a very interesting area. And of course, in political science, I think some of the things that we learned, which I think are still very relevant today. In fact, unfortunately, so things about the Cold War, things about realism in international politics, and how states look at each other. But I have to say, so I mean, I took quite a number of economics modules as well, and I've always enjoyed that because I think economics really allows you a way of looking at the world to understand what are some of the possible mechanisms in which the world may work. Which I think, therefore, everybody has to have a basic understanding of supply-demand curves. Actually, having some basic macroeconomics as well as microeconomics is really useful. I took courses modules in things like game theory, which I think are just very helpful for people to just form a view of how to understand the world.
Definitely.
And I think as you go through the university education, just think of all these as like different tools. I know very often there's a particular theory and you're supposed to defend why this theory is better than another. But the other way to look at it is actually, as you go through university, you are just sort of accumulating, a bunch of different tools in your toolkit. And these will come in, I would say, applicable at different points in time as you embark later on into work. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And okay, so what made you choose the public sector? So we've done a bit of research and we realized that you've basically been in the public sector your entire career. So was it something that you always wanted to do?
Well, you're being very tactful by not saying exactly how long it was, but it's been a couple of decades. So, I think like many, young people at that time, we were looking at the university. Frankly, I was actually from quite a low income family, quite a humble background, because my mom was the main breadwinner. And the Singapore government was very generous in offering me a scholarship, to go and study overseas, which I would not have been able to do so otherwise. And I think that was just really an excellent opportunity. But in a way, you look at this over a course of a career, it is about choosing to stay, in the public sector each and every time, because I've done different postings across the public sector. So I started in, just to give you a flavor, I've done a lot of things more in the economic as well as the social sectors. So I've worked on things such as pensions reform, our social security issues, public housing, the Pioneer Generation Package, and that's sort of the social side of things, early childhood education as well, healthcare financing and all of that. But on the economic side of things, I was working on intellectual property policy, also expanding the continuing education and training as well. And this was the middle of the 2008 crisis. I was in the Ministry of Manpower. I think we're really trying to save jobs for every worker. So we put out a lot of packages to help employers keep workers and also for workers to keep their skills relevant as well. And just before this posting in trade, I was actually with the Infocom Media Development Authority. So I was doing digitalization. So everything with working with companies to help them actually digitalize, and also the SMEs Go Digital program. But probably the one that I think many Singaporeans might be most familiar with was the Hawkers Go Digital. So that was at the height of COVID, where we were asked to play our part and say that actually, how do we help everyone go digital? How do you make e-payments and all that, right? So that was a huge, very fun in a way, but very rewarding effort as well. So in a way, I think it's not just at the start, but in a way, because of these experiences I've had in the public sector, it's been really fun. And of course now I'm in trade, so that's something that I took on about a year ago as well.
So as you said, you've helped, you have done so many things in the public sector. So what is the most fulfilling part of everything for you?
I don't think it's a single sort of experience, but I think it's really about, seeing the things that you contribute to at a certain point in time, and then how those actually have an impact on people, right? So in a very small way, sometimes you can point to it and say, well, I was part of the team that crafted the Pioneer Generation Package and, changed a lot of ways in which we provide transfers to people to help low-income households. We look at how you contribute to things like, shaping of early childhood education in a time when actually it wasn't so common as it is now. So a lot of expansion has taken place over time. And obviously that's greatly important for things like social mobility. It's the things you do, and sometimes they may not have a very immediate impact at the point in time that you can see. One of the sort of technology postings I've done was with the Energy Market Authority. At the time, we were looking at things such as this about 2009 to 11. So we look at electric vehicles. So actually, I did the first electric vehicles pilot for Singapore about a decade ago. Of course, at that time, EVs were a lot more expensive, but these are things that you sort of put in place the infrastructure, the capabilities, human capabilities, right? Like you need to have people who know how to do these things. And, sometimes when the economics works out, solar panels, we were doing things such as, solar panels floating on reservoirs. And now that you see 10 years later, there's a lot, that's everywhere. And it's just sometimes, being able to see it and contribute to these. I think that's really the impact of being able to do something that, has something that is meaningful. It touches people's lives and in a way, hopefully outlast you as well. At the same time, no policy is ever static and no policy should be static. So we do regularly review these things as well. So these are just, I think, part and parcel of, what it's like to be in the public sector. Yeah.
Thanks for the insights. I think that's very, I think our listeners will definitely enjoy your what you have shared. So as you said, there's a lot of things to do, right? So what are some of the most challenging things in public sector for you?
Well, maybe talking about right now, of course, I think it's really, navigating, I think, the complex international environment. And here, of course, I think even, 3 months ago compared to now is quite different because literally, overnight, the Russia-Ukraine crisis has happened. So, and let me just talk about, what would be, say, relevant, right, for our econ students, especially if you're looking as, economists in MTI. So we have an economist service within MTI. So in a way, when the crisis hit, let's say Russia, Ukraine, very quickly our economists swung to action to, obviously, as MTI would be asked for, what is the impact of this on the global economy? What is the impact of this for Singapore's trade? What is the impact of this for energy prices? And of course, and food and all of that as well. And obviously then, downstream impacts, because there's certain economic models that the economists have, and how do you put this information? At the same time now, the other issue that obviously, in a bit of the post-pandemic recovery, also occasioned with partly because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, I think inflation is high. So there's another, issue that our economists are now looking at and monitoring. Really, because Singapore is such a small and open economy, a lot of these things are global in nature. A lot of these forces are global in nature. We have to do our best to sort of manage and navigate, working with our economists, working with our agencies, of course, working with the private sector and community organizations to, I think, help Singapore navigate all of this. So I would say, in a way, this is a very interesting time, a very challenging time geopolitically that we are living through. So that's sort of like, on one hand, what makes the job complex and interesting. At the same time, it's not all sort of doom and gloom. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities in our region, and also in new and interesting emerging markets, such as in Latin America. So how do we also so put forth what is the way Singapore can work with other countries and represent our companies and say that actually these are ways in which we can collaborate and engage with countries all around the world. So there are a lot of things that we do, and we continually need to do this because we can't sort of rest on our laurels and feel that we've arrived. I think every day, and also with new civil servants coming in, it's really for everyone to sort of keep thinking ahead. What can we do for Singapore, and how can we sort of make this the best place for business, the best place for people to be in? And that is a job that the answer will have to keep changing. Yeah.
I think the world is such a volatile place, and I just like I say, like overnight the Ukraine war is kind of scary. So maybe what is like as you said, you have to be on the go, right, most of the time. So what is a typical day of your work like?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, we've been doing a fair bit of traveling ever since travel opened up. Even last year, we would be traveling for official travel, even, though we've come back, there's quarantine and a lot of tests. So it's a lot better now, right? So let's say if I were in Singapore, a typical day at the office, might be, of course, having bilateral calls or discussions, either physically or virtually with our counterparts. And usually we will have, certain issues we want to talk about, right? For instance, this year, Singapore is the chair of the CPTPP. There's a very big free trade agreement. And as the chair, we are in a very a position of great responsibility for helping, to steer things through and, consult all the different members. And of course, we also have Singapore's interest to put forth as well. So that could be, a bilateral call. Or we could be in a negotiation, a trade, free trade agreement or digital economy agreement negotiation. And then, of course, that is always a very interesting aspect of the work, because we'll be, going, the key is not win-lose thing, right? It's how do you find an outcome that works for all the parties, right? The overall agreement. But there will be issues that you disagree on, and how do you continue to find win-win solutions while also building trust and rapport, with your counterparts as well. And of course, we have, many sort of ongoing issues or projects, and we have internal team discussions, and of course, the stuff that comes through email that, we have to also, tackle as well. But overall, I would say there's no sort of like, typical day. I think that gives a flavor. Of course, when we are on an overseas, trip as well. That's very different. Then, of course, that gives us a even better chance to actually talk to companies, experience what is in the market, hear for ourselves firsthand, what are things. And of course, I think most importantly, build trust and rapport and relationships over the long term with, our sub counterparts in the other countries as well. If you like traveling, you should join us.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people like traveling, especially now that the restrictions are lifted.
Well, I have to say traveling for work is a little different. But
yeah, but definitely it's experience. I would definitely think it's experience for all of us.
Yeah.
All right. So as you said, there's a lot of like communications, a lot of liaising and everything. So what is the nature of work in MTI? Like, is it more qualitative, more quantitative? And in view of this, are there any like advantages for our students to, do more technical degrees or technical courses like computer science, statistics, and all this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely, MTI as an economic ministry and really as the ministry overseeing the economy and trying to sort of chart the future, right, for our economic future. We definitely need folks who are, quantitative in nature, but of course, I think qualitative part is always important. So it's really how you balance these two. Maybe just to, because we do have a very, wide array of kind of work, but maybe let me give you a flavor of what the economists themselves do, right? Seeing that, all of you guys are from the economics faculty. So our economists typically do three things, right? So this is the sort of professional service within, and they are not just within MTI, but our economist service, economists are sort of across also seconded out to different ministries as well. So some key things, of course, one is really surveillance, meaning economic surveillance, what's happening to the global economy, what's happening, especially after immediate shock, like the Russia-Ukraine issue, what's happening in inflation. So there's global surveillance and also therefore the impacts on Singapore's economy. That's one. A second part is research. So very often there will be quite interesting things that they will, and nowadays, a lot more research by pulling together a lot of big data as well. So for instance, looking at the data to see if there are new opportunities, where should our businesses go into next, what are sort of Singapore's competitive strengths, right? Where are we very good at innovation? So that is the kind of research as well. And then lastly is also the policy analysis. So our economists get into really you want to do, policies with as much empirical data and facts as much as possible, rather than one person's view, compared to another person's view. So very often our economists do very good impact analysis. Does this policy work, and what is the return on investment? Is this really worth what, and sometimes you wouldn't know exactly when you first, implement a new scheme, but you have to gather the evidence and test it. And, you need to do it rigorously as well. So that's one part that is really important. And it's really about figuring out how to do the best policies. So that's, I think, in a way, the kinds of work that we do. And then to your question, of course, in terms of the kinds of skills and all that, I think definitely across the whole of MTI, not just with our economists, there's a lot of emphasis on data analytics. So even our officers who don't necessarily come from economics background, we have a lot of courses and all that to help at least bring people up to, sort of a common starting point. And of course, if for those who are already much more advanced, there's even more to work with. So typically for economists joining us, we will look at, folks having, of course, a good understanding of your economic modules, right? Everything from macro to, labor economics, health economics, and so on. Econometrics is definitely important. And I think quite importantly is also some coding ability, Stata, Python, R. The ones who are definitely more advanced will also have, I think, some machine learning experience as well, because increasingly we are dealing with a lot of data, not just structured, but also unstructured data as well. Okay, so that was me geeking out a little bit, but just to give you guys, a sense. I mean, we have officers come from, various backgrounds, right? A lot of our trade officers actually come from political science or social science backgrounds as well. People from business, from economics, but if you talk about the economists themselves, these are some of the things that skills that we are looking out for as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think building on that question, as you mentioned about like labor economics. So NUS has a specialization in applied policies. So is like, for example, if people don't take that specialization, will they be disadvantaged to join the public sector in any way?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure, these things are all, very useful. But I think it's really coming in with, the ability to learn. And I would say university sets you up, as I'm going back to the earlier thing about what I said, it's just tools, right? Toolkits and so on, and certain knowledge. But it's really, coming in and actually being able to apply some of these skills as well. So I would say, I don't think there's a particular advantage or disadvantage. I think what we've also really looked for are the qualities in people, being curious, being willing to learn, being very agile, but also, in a way, that sort of like respect for, the integrity of your research or the work that you have, being very professional about things. So these, I think, are qualities that actually are much more, the things that we are looking out for and will last for, a very long time over one's career. Yeah.
And then I think a lot of like our students want to join the public sector, right? So like, is there any possible challenges or like misconceptions that you think university students come in and they have that pre-notion that it's actually not that true?
Well, I should ask you first, actually, what kind of notions do you guys have about the public sector?
I think it's along the lines of, always doing market research or doing some, basically very on the ground kind of work. But I'm pretty sure that's not the idea, right?
The public sector, I mean, is very hard to generalize in a way because you have, of course, people doing sort of very what we call policy and strategy. But at the same time, one of the very important things about policies is the implementation, right, and the communication. So you've got to sort of be able to see the whole thing almost end to end. So I think I'm not sure what sort of conceptions there are, but I would say one thing is certainly, when people come in, it is really about, there's a lot of interagency work or collaboration. And one of the things that, I think one of the switch perhaps for officers, I mean, for coming in from a sort of a student environment where, let's say, the question is a bit more defined perhaps, or the team is quite defined, and this is the thing you are expected to deliver, and you sort of get quite immediate feedback about that. Basically, when you go into work, and I think this is not just a public sector, but work in general, is that tends to be a more unstructured environment, right? The kinds of questions are not, there's no sort of a 10-year series answer on it per se, and you have to, actually even think what is the right question to be asking. So I think that spirit of curiosity and inquiry is actually really important. And then working with people to study this, to analyze it, and to get it done. I think that takes a lot of also not just analytical skills, but you need interpersonal skills as well to be able to bring people together and collaborate on things. Because the nature of the kind of things that we do now it just requires us to work across different departments and also different agencies as well.
Definitely. And I think maybe the second last question. So what are some roles, like, do you think in the public sector that you think are, that are well suited to holders of an economics degree? So like everybody always says like economics is a very general degree, right? So like which part of like the public sector do you think like our economics students will most likely find themselves more comfortable with? Or do you feel like, everything is important, every job is important to have maybe an economics knowledge?
I was going to say, I think economic students are indeed very versatile because having that at least understanding of economics is tremendously useful. I think in almost every policy that you are dealing with, I think just the understanding of how do you analyze something, how do you think about how do you apply economics, and like I said, it's also not just in what we might call the economics ministries, of course, like trade and industry, finance. But also in things like, infrastructure, right? Transport economics, for instance, and how do you finance transport infrastructure? In healthcare, healthcare economics and, healthcare financing is something that we're going to be grappling with for a very long time, given that this is one of the, largest items of expenditure we have in our budget. And also, I think even in the sort of social sector, those skills I talked about earlier about how do you analyze, what is a scheme that works better, what's your impact evaluation, and how do you do cost benefit analysis? I think there's something. These are all things I think that are horizontal, and therefore, I think economic students will find, I think you could definitely apply these skills anywhere in the public sector. But certainly, I think in a place like MTI, of course, I think that's where you have to have even more good understanding of economics and understand how do you sort of shape and grow the future economy. But I think one thing is also that the talking to a lot of businesses is important as well, because there's economics, but you have also your the business folks, and then they will also very often give you a sense of actually this is the bridging between theory to the practice itself, how things are actually working as well.
All right. And maybe one final question. So do you have any advice for economics students who want to pursue a career in public sector?
I would say get an internship. I mean, that is the best way to, try it out for yourself. I think, in fact, we have quite a lot of interns with us right now, I think on both the trade and industry side. So I think that is the best way to really understand for yourself what is it like to work in this place and, figure out what skills or knowledge you need. But I think just as importantly, do you like the environment and do you like the people that you're going to be working with? So I think that's really the best way to do that. I would also say, for those of you who are in a university, and assuming this is not your final year, I think it is also good to get some international experience. It's not me wearing my trade hat a little bit, but I think it's just given all the opportunities there are in the region and understanding our region as well would be really, really useful to get some experience working in the region. Pick any of our Southeast Asian countries or somewhere in the region. I'll go further afield. I think that's just a really useful skill and experience that university students can have. Yep. So I think that's probably the best way to most practical piece of advice. And I think that allows you to figure out what is it you actually like to do, because at this stage round, I mean, it must seem like there are endless options, and there are endless options. So the best is to figure out what is that way of finding out more information, get more data.
Definitely. All right. So I think that's all the time we have for this interview. So thank you, Miss Jane Lim, for taking your time to talk with us. And yeah, so this will be episode 3. That's we'll call it a wrap for today. And tune in on our Instagram for more sectors that we plan to interview. So thank you so much, Miss Jane Lim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melvin.
All right.